Merkel turns against von der Leyen, Brussels in shock. In just 47 seconds, 287 billion disappeared from public scrutiny. Ursula von der Leyen didn't defend the budget allocation. She froze at the podium, papers trembling in her hands. The cameras captured every micro-expression. The European Parliament went silent. What did Angela Merkel reveal that made the most powerful woman in Brussels lose her composure in front of the entire continent? I'm standing in the press gallery of the European Parliament in Strasbourg, and I've just witnessed something I never thought possible. The Iron Chancellor, the woman who held Europe together through financial crises, migration waves, and pandemic chaos, has just publicly dismantled her own protégé. This isn't political theater. This is a political execution. It began at exactly 1423 CET. Merkel wasn't scheduled to speak. She wasn't even listed on the parliamentary agenda. But there she was, walking to the microphone with a folder marked Classified Commission Internal Audit 2024-2025. Her face carried that expression I've seen 1,000 times during the Greek debt crisis, that look of someone who has run out of patience with incompetence. Von der Leyen was mid-sentence, defending the European Green Deal's revised budget framework, when Merkel's voice cut through the chamber like a scalpel. Frau Präsidentin, I must interrupt. The formality was devastating. No first names, no diplomatic warmth, just the cold precision of institutional German. The translation headsets crackled with tension as interpreters struggled to capture the subtext. I watched von der Leyen's pupils dilate. Her left hand gripped the podium edge. She tried to smile, that practiced commission president smile, but her jaw was locked. Frau Bundeskanzlerin, she began, but Merkel was already opening the folder. The rustling of paper was the only sound in a room designed for 751 members of parliament. Merkel didn't shout. She never does. She simply read from the document in her hands. Transaction Authorization Code, EUGF 2024 VDL 447, dated March 14, 2025. Emergency Climate Adaptation Fund. Allocated amount, $287 billion. Recipient entity, GreenFuture Consulting GmbH. Registered in Luxembourg. Operational address Frankfurt. Advisory board member, Heiko von der Leyen. The silence that followed wasn't just absence of sound. It was the vacuum created when an entire political reality collapses. I've covered European politics for 11 years. I've seen corruption scandals. I've seen resignations. I've seen no confidence votes. But I've never seen anything like the look on von der Leyen's face in that moment. It was the expression of someone watching their legacy disintegrate in real time. Merkel continued, and her tone shifted from bureaucratic recitation to something far more dangerous: moral authority. I recommended you for this position in 2019. I vouched for your integrity when others raised concerns about your ministerial record in Berlin. I told the council you would bring transparency to Brussels. She paused. 3 seconds. An eternity. I was wrong. The chamber erupted, not with cheers or boos, but with that specific kind of chaos that happens when institutions realize their foundations are cracking. The Patriots for Europe faction began pounding their desks. The Greens sat frozen, staring at tablets, frantically pulling up GreenFuture Consulting's corporate registry. Guy Verhofstadt was on his phone. Even the stenographers stopped typing. Von der Leyen tried to respond. This is a mischaracterization of standard procurement. But Merkel cut her off with a raised hand. No words, just the gesture. And von der Leyen stopped talking. That's when I knew this was over. Merkel wasn't finished. She produced a second document, this one stamped with the seal of the Bundesrechnungshof, Germany's Federal Audit Office. This report, compiled over 18 months by independent auditors, traces $287 billion through 14 shell companies, 6 jurisdictions, and ultimately to a consultancy firm that employs your son as senior strategic advisor, the same firm that won a no-bid contract for climate policy advisory services worth $840 million over 3 years. I glanced at the press box. Reuters was already pushing alerts. Bloomberg's correspondent was typing so fast I could hear the keyboard from 3 rows away. Politico Europe's editor was on a video call, likely with the Home Office. This wasn't going to be contained. The numbers kept coming. Merkel's delivery was surgical. 19.4 million for a sustainability impact assessment that was never published. 63 million for stakeholder consultation workshops with no attendance records. 140 million for digital infrastructure planning with no infrastructure to show for it. Each figure landed like a hammer blow. Von der Leyen's face had gone from pale to gray. Then Merkel did something I've never seen her do in 16 years as Chancellor. She turned away from the podium and addressed the chamber directly, not as a head of government, but as a European citizen. I built my career on the principle that Europe's strength comes from its institutional credibility. If we allow corruption to flourish at the highest level, we don't just betray taxpayers, we betray the very idea of European unity. The applause started slowly. From the center-right EPP benches, the same party that had elevated von der Leyen. Then it spread. The socialists joined, then the centrists. Even members of the Identity and Democracy group were nodding. In European Parliament terms, this was a standing ovation without anyone actually standing. The political signal was unmistakable. Von der Leyen had lost the room. Von der Leyen attempted damage control. She invoked procedural rules, claimed the audit was incomplete, mentioned ongoing legal reviews. But her voice had lost its authority. She sounded like a bureaucrat reading from talking points, which is exactly what she was doing. Her chief of staff, Björn Seibert, was furiously typing on a tablet behind her, probably drafting a press release that would be obsolete before it could be distributed. Merkel returned to her seat. She didn't look triumphant. She looked exhausted. This wasn't a victory for her. This was the painful duty of someone cleaning up a mess that never should have happened. As she sat down, she placed the folders on the desk in front of her, covers facing up, visible to every camera in the room. The message was clear. There's more where this came from. I watched the social media metrics explode on my phone. Merkel vs. von der Leyen was trending in 14 languages within 6 minutes. Twitter was ablaze with reactions from MEPs who hadn't even left the chamber yet. The European political establishment was having a collective nervous breakdown in real time. The markets reacted instantly. The euro dropped 0.6% against the dollar within 20 minutes. The DAX index stumbled. This wasn't just political drama. This was a credibility crisis with measurable economic consequences. Behind the scenes, the chaos was unfolding. According to sources inside the Berlaymont building, von der Leyen's inner circle convened an emergency session. Commission vice presidents were split. Some wanted her to resign immediately. Others argued she should fight. But nobody believes Merkel acts out of pettiness. The European Public Prosecutor's Office issued a statement within 2 hours. They're opening a formal investigation. Laura Kudryavtseva, the chief prosecutor, doesn't move unless the case is airtight. As I write this, 6 hours after Merkel's intervention, von der Leyen has not made a public appearance. Her schedule shows canceled meetings. The Commission's press office is directing all inquiries to a generic statement about commitment to transparency. That's the white flag. The implications extend beyond one career. If von der Leyen falls, the entire College of Commissioners becomes vulnerable. Merkel hasn't just exposed one scandal. She's opened the floodgates. The German political establishment is in shock. Von der Leyen was supposed to be Merkel's legacy in Brussels. Instead, she became the symbol of everything Merkel spent decades trying to prevent: nepotism dressed up as technocracy. I keep replaying that moment when Merkel said, "I was wrong." Those 3 words carry more weight than any resignation speech. They represent the collapse of trust at the highest level of European governance. The clock is ticking. The European Council meets in 9 days. National leaders will arrive with media demanding answers. Macron released a statement calling for full transparency. Translation: von der Leyen is on her own. This is what institutional collapse looks like. No military coups, no revolutions, just spreadsheets, audit trails, and a former chancellor reading numbers until the facade crumbles. Angela Merkel walked into the European Parliament today and did what she's always done. She told the truth, backed by irrefutable evidence, delivered without emotion, and in doing so, she may have just ended the career of the woman she once called Europe's future. Von der Leyen's attempted rebuttal was excruciating to watch. She cited Article 317 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, mentioned oversight committees. But these were just words, hollow institutional defenses against concrete evidence, the fidgeting with documents, the glances toward advisors who have no answers, the careful avoidance of direct eye contact. What made this moment historically significant wasn't just the accusation, it was the source. Merkel isn't a populist firebrand. When she speaks, it carries the weight of 16 years governing Europe's economic powerhouse. She doesn't make claims she can't substantiate. That's precisely why her intervention was so devastating. The interpreters in their glass booths above the floor were leaning forward, headphones pressed tight. The stenographers had abandoned their usual mechanical rhythm. Even the security personnel along the walls had stopped their routine scanning and were watching the podium. Everyone understood they were witnessing a pivot point in European political history. The financial details Merkel revealed weren't just damaging because of their scale, they were damaging because of their specificity. She provided transaction codes, dates, corporate registration numbers, contract values down to the €100,000 precision. This was the work of investigators who had spent months building an airtight case. The GreenFuture consulting revelation was particularly toxic because it exposed the hypocrisy of von der Leyen's Commission presidency. She had built her political brand on green transformation, fighting climate change, transparent governance, and now the very programs designed to save the planet were being used to enrich her family. The symbolic betrayal was almost worse than the financial crime. As the session finally adjourned, I watched von der Leyen gather her papers with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Her security detail formed a tight circle as she exited through the side corridor. Any public statement would have been suicide. The absence of a statement was its own confession. Merkel left through the main entrance. No entourage. Just the former chancellor walking calmly through the halls, briefcase in hand. She'd said what needed to be said. The evidence spoke. The sun is setting over Strasbourg. In prosecutorial offices across Europe, legal teams are preparing indictments. In newsrooms, journalists are pulling financial records. In national capitals, prime ministers